Five-Track Final, J. Sam Jones from the Mothership and Dirty South Soccer. Sometimes Joe Patrick, when I just run the game, Dress of Soccer, all the time is over there. And Joe, aren't we all just in some way snakes roasting in the sun?
Yes. We were just talking about this. I am so scared. I'm so scared for this next hour or so. It's going to be an interesting exercise. By the
We
way, I
already.
did not really even watch much of the game. I was actually enjoying my life, seeing fireworks
Hmm.
and really,
Mm-hmm.
enriching my spirit. Um, but I do hate myself, so I did watch it later.
Nice. That's
Did
wow.
you?
That's extreme bravery and heroism on your part. I went to bed. I felt pretty confident after 2-0 that things were going to be just about the same when I woke up, and they were. And they were. I also had to get up at like 4:30 to run a race, but that's beside the
Oh,
point.
that's right. What did you
Yeah,
run at it? What was your kind of final? Give us your the Peachtree.
it's damn early. I know
Yeah.
that for sure. Shoot, man, I had to wake up at 4:30, go up a MARTA, all that kind of thing.
No, but like
But
what time did you run it in?
53 minutes. It's about 8:30 per mile, I think, which is not phenomenal for me. I wanted
Mm.
more. I wanted better, but don't we all? Don't we all? I did. I finished better than if the guy who won the race ran it twice, though. And that was a good goal for me because the guy who won it ran it in like 28 minutes. And so he didn't double me up. I would not have been last.
Nice.
That makes me happy.
Can
Makes
I
me
share?
happy.
Can I share a funny story, kind of relevant to this?
Please let's
I've
get all the lighthearted like B story shit out of the
yes,
way before we
yes.
get into the dark like
I've
BoJack
I've
Horseman A
run
story.
I've run one of these kinds of races. It was a 5K, just like a real fun like 5K. It was called like the Big Ten 5K or something, or the big maybe it was a no, it wasn't the 10K. Anyway, it was like up in Chicago, and I was up there because my friend lives there, and I didn't plan on running it, but his sister, who also lived in Chicago, was like, "Hey, I was going to run it with my fiance, but he can't do it anymore. So would you like to take his place?" I said, "Sure, that would be fun," because I think I was up there, it was like on a Friday, and my buddy was still working. So, and I'm friends with his sister anyway. So anyway, I go and take the fiance's spot. The fiance had filled out the paperwork wrong and basically wrote down that he could run like a 4 minute mile. So I was number six. That was my number. And so like, and then I'm like, okay, well, obviously I'm just like not gonna go with that heat. I'm just gonna like lurk around with her and like, run with her. And everyone was like giving me looks like no one actually thought I was fast because obviously I'm really fat and out of shape. So it was just like really funny. Everybody was just giving me weird looks.
Incredible. For
Yeah.
reference for this one, I was like number 7,587,
Yeah.
So there we go. There we
I was
go.
a whole I was a
6 is a
holding
hell of
mid.
a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, people had really high expectations for Joe there, but our expectations are quickly diminishing for Atlanta United. They lose 3-0 in this one to Chicago, who is a better soccer team than I think most people realize. The underlying numbers are way better than people realize.
Mm,
Not a team you should lose 3-0 to though. Not like
yeah.
that. Not
Yeah.
like that. It was they barely put up a fight. Everything was rough. And yeah, I guess well, was that sports prime game time? I think that's it. I think
That
that's
was
the whole
yeah,
thing,
that's
right?
the game.
Like whatever.
No, it did seem like there were some people were optimistic about Machop Chol. I think people had some questions about that, and I think that's fair. But I was actually just on the radio talking about this on 92.9 before we started here, and we were just kind of talking about what Atlanta United's prospects are really for this season. And obviously, my expectations have totally changed from where they were, a couple months ago. I'm sure yours have also, just based on what we've seen. And for me, really, what I hope the team gets out of this next month while players are missing on international duty and stuff is just like evaluating what you have, especially in terms of these young players. So I really hope Machop Chol gets time. That's why we've kind of been wanting Jackson Conway to get time over Kubo Torres because you just want to know what you have, and hopefully we can get some more information and answers to that kind of thing over this next month. But it's going to be ugly, man. It's going to be really not very fun to watch. I think.
I think people were excited about Machop because he ran,
Breath of
and
fresh air.
sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just it. That's the whole thing. Like you ran, and to give people credit, sometimes we talk about how hard soccer is, and yes, it's a very hard sport. It's a tough sport. People kind of underrate how tough it is, right? But sometimes You just need to run at somebody.
Yeah.
That can literally be the whole thing. Like you go back and you look at right now, even with the Galaxy and what they've done to help create space for Chicharito, sometimes using a second striker, letting the wingers create space and everything like that. They are getting in behind, and that is what is helping create space for a striker like Chicharito to have what now 11 goals, 10 goals already in this season. And it's because they're making runs in behind. It's how Ethan Zubak is earning a paycheck, even though he's just Ethan Zubak, honestly. You know, he
Yeah.
makes those runs. And like if Machop is going to be the guy to do that, great. Let's put him out there because we talk about the pace of Jake and the pace of Jurgen Damm as well, but they aren't really guys who I necessarily consider folks who like to run in behind. They like to dribble. They like to get
Mhm.
past people, right? But I'm not sure
Mhm.
they ever really make those runs off the ball that you need to open up space.
And I would continue to go back to this team spends so much energy defensively chasing guys
Uh,
around that it becomes so much harder, not just physically, but also just like emotionally and mentally to make those off the ball runs that so often you don't get rewarded for, but you might open up space for somebody else. And so to do that selfless thing, you really kind of need the spirit to be able to do it. And I think that a lot of these people's spirits are crushed right now, as mine is. No,
hmm.
I just think that it makes it all the more harder to do that when you're physically exhausted from, chasing guys around. And it's just so frustrating to watch again. When I was watching the game on the rewatch today, it's just, you see more of it. You see, there was on the one goal, Mo Adams gets beat. I think it was the first goal that was scored. Mo Adams gets beat. And Barco is there and could theoretically come to recover, but then he would leave his man, so he doesn't do it, and the guy just dribbles right past him. And then I think Anton Walks later took responsibility, saying that he could have stepped up and stopped it. But I mean, it just goes to show that the way that this team is functioning right now leaves so little room for error, and it makes it so much harder to be effective on the offensive end too. So that's, I think, all those things. When you put all that together in a pot and mix it up, it makes for a really not great product to watch.
We've got a whole bunch of questions coming about all of this in the question segment. We have kind of lost the plot a little bit. So we'll get back to the beginning of the show, I guess, and how I normally do things. A little bit of
Yeah, we just kind of ran right
housekeeping.
into it, didn't we?
Go. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. God, do we really
Crash
want to
test
get over
dummies
it that
here.
fast? I think so. Housekeeping stuff real quick though. Go ahead and check out the Patreon if you haven't already. Patreon.com/5stripe final. New stuff coming to you all the time. Daily sort of kind of episodes coming to you. News updates, interviews with folks like our latest one with Jack Collison, the new manager of the Twos, who was phenomenal, even though he was on a bus on I-20 heading towards Birmingham at the time. Did a great job with us. Really, really likable guy. We enjoy talking to Collison a lot
And
there.
potentially, did we break news on that at the end of that podcast?
We
Maybe.
did. We did.
He said
I think you
to
were
prepare
excited about
ourselves
it.
for some surprises, and
Ah,
which I
yeah,
love
that's right.
surprises. So
Yeah, we'll see what happens there.
especially with this team right now, it's like any surprise has got to be good, right?
Exactly, exactly. Even if it is just maybe a potential homegrown or something like that, whatever it could
Yeah,
possibly mean with the twos, right?
yeah.
With other stuff as well, MLS Assist joined us. We're gonna have, I think, Felipe on later in the week
Yes,
as
Felipe this
well
week.
on the Patreon. Talk about the general state of the team and get some fresh perspectives on that it's not just me and Joe. Thanks to Kurt Castle for the intro, and thanks to you guys for staying with us through business time. Business time, Joe, Patrick, and not a whole lot of news to get to, but we do need to remind everyone that everyone else is gone. There's no one here
Yeah.
at this office. That all the cubicles are
Right.
empty,
Yeah.
and it's weird and quiet, and all you can hear is your breathing and the clacking of your lone computer. Because Brad Gazan, George Bello, Miles Robinson, all gone to the Gold Cup, and now Ezequiel Barco off to the Olympics with Argentina. That and a whole bunch of injuries. Joe Patrick, who's left?
I don't know. There's not many players, and I was curious as to whether Atlanta United, there are so many players missing, whether the team would actually be eligible to sign some of these kind of medical hardship contracts, whatever they're called, the 4-day ones that Rocco Rios Novo signed earlier this year when Brad Guzan was unavailable. I got in touch with the team, and the team told me that according to what they know, that you have to be down to 14 field players or less, or maybe it's under 14 field players. So either one of those is right. At least that was the former rule. I don't know if things have changed since COVID and all that, and maybe that's something I should have prepared for before this podcast. But potentially, I mean, Atlanta United is missing so many players. You could potentially see that happen. Honestly, and I mean, they would have a short bench and everything, but That's how threadbare it is, and we're going to see more Tyler Wolf playing in central midfield and more of these young homegrown players who haven't really seen much game time get time. So at least we're going to see some of them, but it's I don't know, not the best picture.
I do want to add to this as well. We're just understanding this is going on right now as media availability goes on while we're doing this show because we can
Oh
only
yeah,
record it
oops.
right now. Oops. Felipe reporting, not reporting. He just got told this in a press conference. I'm not giving him that much credit. Come on,
Yeah,
guys. He's got to earn that. He usually does. Joseph Martinez has not joined full contact training yet,
sweet.
so highly doubtful he'll be ready for Thursday's game against a good Nashville team. So there you go. We were gonna
So
say, hey,
scared.
at least Joseph is back. He's not. I mean, he's here, but he's not like
I
back
feel
back.
like I feel like there's no way Kubo Torres is going to be fit enough to start again on Thursday.
He's
Like
not.
that's
I
just
mean, you give him
it
like 2 weeks of rest, and he's not. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, Gabriel Heinze, I would say to his credit, actually didn't push a guy like Santiago Sosa, who he said just like what had not recovered enough in time for this game. I'm glad. I'm glad that he actually, took that step, that kind of that safety step, because you don't want something disastrous happening where you have a major injury because of overuse and you're out for it's going to impact you beyond this transfer window potentially. So I'm glad that he took that step, and I don't know, I just feel like you have to give some of these young players minutes. They're going to be the ones that are more fit and ready to play, during a congested time of the fixture list. So I'm kind of torn about, like, I want to see him for sure, but also I'm just kind of bracing myself for what this team is going to look like when they're in, because they are players that would typically be your reserves or players you don't
Mhm.
ideally want to see on the field for you. But it is what it is.
We talked about Josh Wolf there a second ago, and when we did have two questions from Joel B and Onhep, just kind of asking about Machop. I think we kind of explained our general thoughts on that right now, and hopefully, I think we may see him tomorrow, right? At least during this run, I think he may get a run out in the starting 11. But Joel B did ask, what did you guys think of Wolf on Saturday? And I think the general consensus was that he was not spectacular.
Yeah,
He's a young
he
kid.
was okay. Yeah, I kind of feel bad for him because I feel like I think I remember him playing as basically a center forward, like a number nine. Maybe not a hold up player, but as a lone center forward for the Twos when he's played with them earlier this season. Definitely in a more attacking role, not in a kind of a sitting central midfield role that he was yesterday. So, or on Sunday, whenever that Saturday when the game was. So, I kind of feel bad for him that he's being thrust into this position, but he does have some experience. But I don't know. My expectations are low, but maybe they can overachieve. Maybe they can go above my expectations. Can I say one more thing that bothered me about this game? Was that every
Sure.
time it seemed I'm just going, I'm ranting. Every time it seemed like Atlanta United put together a decent attacking move going forward, where you connect 4 or 5 passes, progressing the ball, moving the ball into the final third, the chance always ends up with a cross from the right side. It's like, oh, this is such a bad quote unquote chance that you've created out of what is a decent attack move. It's like one of the better attack moves you've put together, and then it just ends up in this very low percentage cross into Kubo Torres. It's just not the way you want to see the ball being delivered into the final third. You want, and Gabriel Heinze even pointed it out. I was on the post match press conference. I was reading the quote sheet, and he said, um, "We are creating some, but we need to create more chances. We need to get more through passes. We need to try to beat the last line." And I agree with him there. They it seems like they are hardly ever putting the ball through the last line of the defenders.
I don't think I think that Gabby understands the problems, right? Like I
Yes.
think some people are getting on him for this being so predictive and repetitive, but I'm just not sure what the other options are right now, just
Mm-hmm.
based on
That's fair.
personnel and what's going on. Right. Like I think he understands that the ball needs to be in better positions. I think he understands that the ball doesn't need to be crossed in kind of lazily from the wing 40 times a game. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone involved understands that. It's just like it's Cubo Torres in team form, right? Like you know what you're supposed to be doing, but maybe your body can't do it. Right. And that's just kind of where I think they are right now. And I'm not sure if it gets better. I'm not sure if it gets better on Thursday when they go up to Nashville. I don't know what time the game is. I think it's at 8 Eastern time, 7 Central,
8:30, I
because
think it's
they
kickoff.
they run on God's time over there in
Yeah,
Tennessee.
Central Time Zone is the best.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I don't know. Nashville's good. We know this. They came back on us last time. They figured out how to do a reverse comeback last week when they scored early in the game and just held on to the lead from there against Philadelphia. So they're coming off a big win there. Yeah, Joe. Any particular thoughts other than oh?
No, I mean Nashville kind of reminds me of maybe almost like a better version of Minnesota, like the way in terms of the way that their club launched, where you know more of a slow burn, as we've kind of always made this comparison, where Atlanta United was like make that explosion off the top. They've had more of a slow burn, but they just continue, it seems like, to progress and get better and better. And now I think they're one of the better teams, in MLS. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously going to be a huge challenge going up there, especially with, everything we've talked about with where the squad is at. And I want to go back to the point that you were talking about with Gabriel Heinze recognizing the problems in the team. And I totally agree. And I think that that's where it becomes a very interesting exercise trying to figure out when you're trying to um, just figure out where the issues in the squad are coming from. It's like a lot of it is down to the quality of the players that are on the field for the team. Like when you look at the team that was out there against Chicago, I don't, I think Chicago's the more talented team that was out there when you just look at the players. So, it's hard. It can be hard for the coach because he's got to go out there and answer the questions and do all that. He's the more public face. You see his anguish on the touchline, when the team is performing poorly. And so that obviously kind of resonates with people. But, there's lots of issues within the organization, within the whole structure of the club, obviously, with that, top down from Carlos Bocanegra and his technical director leadership and on down, that this club needs to sort out to try to make sure that they can use this transfer window to the best of their ability to improve that level of player that's on the field for them.
I'm going to throw out something here, and you can respond to it how you see fit. Gabby understands that the problems are there in a way that Frank did not or would not admit to.
Unpack that a little bit more. Keep
Okay.
going.
I think that I don't know. I think people kept telling Frank there were problems and there were problems and everything like that, and he was more unwilling to concede that to an extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or to even agree with that, just on a personal level, right? And I think that Gabby understands it more. I think some of the quotes he said have kind of been pulled a little out of context about him, saying I'm not going to change and everything like that. But if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
kind of go deeper into that, he says, I'm not going to change my philosophy, but here's what we have to do better within that philosophy.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's a level of understanding that maybe Frank never got to.
Agree. I definitely agree with that. And I also
Okay.
think that Frank had the better roster. And so like when you're
God, yes.
when Frank is
Holy crap.
yeah, so when these comparisons get made and everything, it's like Frank was still had Nagby and LGP and Tito and all these good players that we know and love, right? And they're
Yeah.
kind of become Atlanta United legends, most of them at least. So that is a big difference, especially when you're looking at like comparisons, like oh well, Gabriel Heinze is doing worse than DeBoer did in this amount of games or whatever it is. Definitely have to take that into account. And so, but I also think that for that reason that for Frank, it was a lot more of just like, my players out there are good. And I don't see where the issues really are, but yeah, I definitely agree with you about that. Gabriel Heinze is more self-critical and understands where this team needs to improve. And again, that's why I kind of have some optimism that he can have some input in this transfer window in terms of getting in the profiles of players they need, and getting certain players that aren't helping the team out of the picture. That's going to be a huge part of this transfer window.
Having optimism about that does not mean we're absolving him from any criticism. And I think
Yeah.
we'll get into a little bit more about the foundation that's being set for this team and everything like that within the question segment. But we do understand that there are things that have not been executed well, right? And he's also admitted to this. Like, for example, the injuries. The injuries are concerning. He's doing something very somewhat similar to Tata, right? Where Tata kind of ran folks into the ground during training,
Hmm.
and it seems to be kind of reflecting within the team as well. Sometimes also you just have bad breaks, right? Like we can't blame it entirely on him. But there are legitimate things to say, but I think it's also fair right now to take the situation as a whole within context and really again kind of hammer home that year zero thing where this is about creating that foundation. Now we can criticize where that foundation is at right now currently in the building process, but I don't know. I'm with you. I think it's still okay to be a little optimistic.
I'd like to just go ahead and read his response that he had when asked about the injury situation. This is Gabriel Heinze, and I'll screw this up because I'm bad at reading. But he said, look, there are some motives. There are different situations with both of them. He's talking about Santiago Sosa and Alan Franco, by the way. He says, it's true that the way I work, this thing could happen, and I'm responsible. But these things take time and understand the way we work. The situation with these two players was totally different. Let me repeat that I'm the only one responsible. I'm not telling you this to take responsibility from our players. Let me tell you this because I'm the responsible one for this. He said in each case was different. Sosa didn't recover from our last game. Franco happened the day before. But I think that, I thought it was, it builds credibility in my mind that he is
Mm-hmm.
taking responsibility for, I think the Alan Franco one specifically is the one where he's like, that really shouldn't happen, especially when you're already kind of with a thinner squad than you would like coming into this game, that you lose a player the day before. But yeah, I wonder if we've been hearing from fans and we've been saying it ourselves that we'd like to see the manager adapt to certain situations, whether that's tactically on the field, but hopefully he can also adapt to the load that these players are taking on and how that relates to the training regime that he has them doing.
All right, one last piece of business time info. Remember that the transfer window opens on what's today? Today Tuesday.
Yeah,
Today's
it's
Tuesday.
tomorrow. It opens.
Opens tomorrow, which is Wednesday. It opens Wednesday, depending on when you're listening to this. So July 7th. And there we go. Y'all had a lot of questions about that and a whole bunch of other things as well. We'll get to them right after this short break. Wow, what a break. What an incredible break. The best break. I have never, ever heard a break in my entire life like that break. Let's start with these two questions that are very, very similar from Palm Tree 23 and Tony, both in the Discord on our Patreon, patreon.com/5stripe final. And I think they kind of set the tone for where folks are kind of at. And I think it's a good way to kind of start at the top with these questions to set somewhat of a framework for where people's minds are within context of Atlanta United 2021. I'm stalling. I'm stalling if you can't tell.
Yeah.
I'm just scared of these, but let's do this, I guess.
Only way we can do it is face them head on.
How long? This is Palm Tree 23, aka Palmer. How long after the transfer window does Gabby and or Boca get before they're on the hot seat? And then Tony asks, will Boca make it to the end of the season? Joe, I think me and you have gone somewhat on record, I guess as much as the show can be considered on record of anything, that Boca will at least last to the end of his contract, right? Which is
Assuming that
through
that
this
contract
season.
as reported ends at the end of the season,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I would expect that. I just don't see the point in making a move before that happens.
Mm-hmm. As far as the hot seat goes, I think Boca is already on it.
Yes.
I don't think that's unfair,
No.
considering everything. As far as Gabby goes, I am still very firmly in the camp that this is a year zero, and I think the team would agree with that sentiment as well.
I am too. I don't think you should ever have a manager. I don't think very rarely should a manager ever be fired, I guess, for this. That's the kind of words we're talking in, within a year, like within a season of him signing. I just don't think that makes sense. I don't think it makes sense for many reasons, financially, for the club. Go ahead.
Unless,
Unless
unless you are A team coming off a year where you finished second in the Supporter Shield, you're bringing in multiple talented DPs back. You have a DP coming in who's one of the best players in Argentina. You bring back almost an entire roster. You have a loaded academy. You have incredible talent all over the field, and you get goddamn 5 points from 11 games. Then you get your ass fired.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Uh,
that's very rare. It takes a very rare individual to be able to achieve such a.
Someone who may have, in fact, blown several opportunities to potentially achieve greater things. Look, we had a couple questions kind of in that same mindset of
Yeah.
like Chris Armas got fired. We're also crappy at soccer. What about that? And it's just totally different scenarios.
Yeah.
It
Big
truly,
difference.
truly is. Toronto
Yeah.
regressed so hard and so quickly and lost the locker room and everything that looked similar to how the team regressed in 2020 for Atlanta, right? Like
Mhm.
when Frank lost the locker room and everything like
Mhm.
that, which of course, I mean, he lost the locker room like 3 months in, but still,
Right.
at least that team was winning to
I
some extent.
I am concerned about the locker room. Not necessarily that
Sure.
they're going to like start tuning out Gabriel Heinze, but I just do worry about the general emotions in that locker room becoming so dour that it just creates a negative vibe and its players are unhappy because of it. I do worry about that. But I don't think that they necessarily lose faith in Gabriel Heinze, at least not yet. I think that this team understands that they can be so much better, and they haven't really had their full complement of pieces yet. You know, when you talk about
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Martinez still recovering from his injury earlier this season, and you know all these players that have been missing over the course of it. You know, I just feel like the players probably know that they haven't seen what this team can be at its full potential. But you know, yeah, there definitely are concerns. Um, I want to go back to the Boca thing real quick.
Okay.
I just like I think that again this is all kind of this whole conversation is predicated on this presumption that the reporting is correct that this is the last year of his contract. I could see the team, if that is true and they know they're going to move on from him after the contract, I could see them kind of saying some acknowledging the fact that they're moving on, or that we hear about a hire that comes into a high level front office position before he's gone. And I think that that would make a lot of sense. And I think that that's what they honestly tried to do when they hired, Paul McDonough and brought him back into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, regarding the Boca out thing, I've I never want to call for somebody's job because I would hate for somebody to do that to me. And I want to, like, I'm very aware it's a very difficult job and everything. And I don't think that just because whether it's a manager that should be fired or front office personnel, like, I don't think that that necessarily means that they're incompetent or whatever. But I think that, in the case of Carlos Bocanegra in this front office, we've seen them be successful when Carlos Bocanegra is focused on, a certain um, set of competencies or a certain set of duties that fit his competencies very well and leave other things to other people who have strengths in those areas. And so we saw the way that Paul McDonough and him were both able to kind of tag team the situation and put together a really good squad and a really good twos, and all that stuff that goes into, this technical directorship.
Recruiting coordinator
Yes.
Carlos
Yes.
Bocanegra, right? Like that was kind of the way we understood his role initially,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was to bring in guys who he had connections with and everything like that, or could talk to other guys who'd been around the league and could convince them to be a part of this project. And clearly that worked to an extent, right? It's kind of where apparently more responsibility kind of either thrust upon him or taken by him, that things started going a little haywire. I totally agree with that sentiment for sure. For sure. Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. I don't know. I think Carlos Bocanegra needs more
I mean,
time.
there's a I like again. I tweeted this a couple weeks ago or something, but I'll say it again here. Like, there is a lot that goes into running a club from the technical director level that is not related to what you were just talking about and what a lot of fans focus on, which is the recruitment, the signing of players, the selling of players, the squad on the first team roster. There's the whole Atlanta United 2 setup, there's the academy setup, there's day-to-day oversight of, training and fitness and sports science, and all this stuff all gets wrapped up in this technical directorship. And I think that Carlos Bocanegra does have a good idea of what he's doing with a lot of these aspects. But I think that just when it comes to scouting, signing players, evaluating quality from outside the league coming in, and maybe from the club and the internal scouting that happens within the club, I would prefer another voice or another mind come in and be able to kind of have input in that.
Let's shift to this next question, and it's a fun one to put right after the first set of questions here. I think we're gonna shift maybe some minds, maybe our tone for a second here. Logan the Shogun ask hot take question: is Gabriel Heinze a dude? And this
Hmm.
is an interesting question that I'm not sure we've really kind of diving into,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this was a guy who we on the show have said many times that we thought would be a good fit with this team, that everyone has kind of thought would be a good fit with this team. And it sounds kind of similar to how we talked about PD.
Yeah.
Right?
South American
Um,
Coach of the Year.
exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, we've been wrong before about talent translating to MLS, right? Is there a chance that we are in a similar scenario now? And I think the answer is yes, there's a chance, but I'm not remotely close to willing to put a verdict on that yet.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know the answer whether Gabriel Heinze is a dude. I will say that it's something that we were talking about in the Slack before we started the show today, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a while now. Which is that I'm just curious as to how well the Argentine game, the Superliga, translates to performance in MLS, where things are so different. And it's weird because my priors said that it's a great league because you had Tata Martino that comes from there. Miguel Almiron came in and made a huge impact. Was the best player in the league coming from Lanús. Um, but since then, uh, um, I am just curious as to how well it translates. And when I think back to games that I watch, which is albeit pretty rarely, I'm not like watching Superliga every week, but every once in a while when there's a big game, I'll tune it on. And yeah, it seems like insane soccer to me. It's like players in one-on-ones all over the field. There's huge gaps, which makes it, I think, easy for attackers to look good. And I think that's, when I think about it even more, I start to like unpack the situation. I'm like, well, maybe that's like one of the reasons why it was harder to see Ezekiel Barco's flaws and like the decision making and, um, you know, the struggles that he has in that area, because that's something that wasn't really a pressure point for him when he was at Independiente. At Independiente, he was just on the wing, trying shit, and if it is coming off great, if you can easily look good. Pitti, we've seen the same thing. But I'm just kind of growing more skeptical as to how well all that stuff translates. And now, obviously, with managers, I'm kind of
Mhm.
also growing concerned as to how well the ideas that Gabriel Heinze is bringing to this team translates to MLS.
Do you remember when the first coaching search after Tata left came about, and one of the big names was Guillermo Barros Scaletta?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
All right,
dreams, baby. That
yeah,
was that was the that was like the
that was the
argument.
argument, right? Exactly. And then he went to the Galaxy and was terrible, right?
Yep.
Just didn't cut it, you know. And I don't know. It's interesting as the sample size kind of grows to see, the if you are an average to above average person in the Superliga, right? It doesn't seem like in any capacity you're gonna suddenly be the best player in MLS. Like the quality of the league has just kind of jumped up that much, I think, and will continue to do so. Right. So this is a more difficult task
Exactly.
than
Yep.
maybe we assumed in the beginning. And maybe we're correct in assuming that because the league has changed so much since Atlanta United joined. Right. It's
Mm-hmm.
progressively gotten better in part thanks to Atlanta United. So
I think it's a
hmm.
reason that you see these experienced MLS coaches have success is because they know the league.
Hmm. Exactly right. Exactly right. And maybe it takes a while for Gabby to become a dude within that context. I don't think he's a bad manager, right? Like
No,
I
I don't
think
either. I don't either.
I think all the stuff we read and all the things we heard and everything like that, and what we watched even from the stuff at Velas and things like that, indicate that this is someone who knows how to get a team to win. But can they do that in MLS is maybe a different question right now. I think Gabby's a dude still. I'm holding out hope, but I'm not entirely sure. And one of the reasons is partly due to what's asked in this next question from ATL Greg One, who says, I honestly want to know Was Gabby running the same immense spatial freedom and possession slash man marking on defense system at Velas? And if so, how the blank is it actually supposed to work? And this is a topic we talked about with MLS Assist a lot, which is how is this supposed to work? And they went, oh, I don't think it does, you know,
I
which isn't great, which isn't great.
I think I joked to you privately some time in the recent weeks where I was thinking back to the conversation that we had with Peter Coates at Golazo Argentino when we talked to him after Heinze had been announced, and it's like, really wish you would have mentioned the whole man marking across the field situation. Not that I'm trying to that interview was really good, and honestly, if everyone should go back and listen to that interview. He talked specifically about the Sosa role. That was like a large part of our conversation. Actually, was the number 5, which is the number that Sosa wears. Unsurprisingly, is like a very key role for Gabriel Heinze, and we've seen him continue to. He used Mo Adams in that same role. He did not deviate from that. So, but yeah, the man marking situation is something that I didn't realize was coming with him. It wouldn't even bother me so much if we man marked and like created more pressure high up the field. In fact, I would think that that's something that this team can do better in this coming month, especially if you're using young players that have a lot of energy. Push them higher up the field. Then you'll create chances for yourself where you don't have to carve up an opponent,
Not a tactical genius. I did read Inverting the Pyramid, hated it, but I think the theory behind it, right, is when you have these man marking principles, is that you can create turnovers, right, and then create opportunistic advantage for your team going forward with overloads and with numbers advantages and things like that that the system allows you to set up in a way that zonal marking does not, right?
Correct.
But my thought, and you kind of hit on it, is that if you're going to do that and if you are going to run your players in the ground during training, shouldn't you also be moving higher up the field, pressing people and contributing to those turnovers in a way instead of just sitting back and letting people dribble right through you, right? Like there should be pressure there. There should be consistent pressing. There should be maybe not quite Red Bulls or Hernan Losado ball, right? But there should be something there that helps create advantages for the team, right? And that's just not happening right now. And they don't look interested in making that happen. And it seems like if you have a crappy roster, like sometimes the Red Bulls do, they're still able to create stuff because they create those turnovers and they play direct. Atlanta has shown none of that. And I don't really understand why.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was trying to pull my Inverting the Pyramid books. I know I have it highlighted in here somewhere. Aha! I just flipped to the page where I have it underlined.
Wow.
Here's a quote. It says, "This is the fundamental. It could be said that the whole history of tactics describes the struggle to achieve the best possible balance of defensive solidity with attacking fluidity." Now, I'm going to use that quote in the context of this pressing situation, which is that Tata Martino seemed relatively fine with putting his players on an island one-on-one at the back, and that the what they gained in the press was actually going to at least offset a lot of those issues that they had at the back. And we talked to Michael Parker and Jeff Lorenowitz both about this, and they said that was an adjustment for them. They didn't necessarily prefer it either. As the defenders, you're kind of going to be the one that's on the hook, and in a tough situation, you got to do your job there. But the benefits were worth it. Or Tata Martino, that's the calculation he came to. And I wonder if this team is just a little maybe too passive in that respect, where Gabriel Heinze wants the covering defender, but then that leaves it makes it so much harder to press effectively when you are just trying to balance that situation. We saw the same or similar thing with Frank DeBoer, where he also wanted that cover defender. That's what he said he wanted to implement in Atlanta United. And we saw them just be less effective with the press. But I would actually say that even Frank DeBoer's team pressed much more effectively than what this team has done so far this season. Which is
crazy.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's something that I understood coming in from everything I had read and then people I had talked to and everything like that, is that there was like if you put them all on a spectrum of Bielcista people, right? Bielsa obviously at the forefront, at the far end of it, of pressing and man marking combined, right? Like really, really working over time. And then Tata would be kind of on the other end, still that Bielsa principle, but still kind of pressing, but not nearly as much, less man marking, things like that. And Gabby was supposed to be somewhere in the middle, right? And that just hasn't been the case in Atlanta. And I don't know if he just thinks that he doesn't have the guys. I don't know if this just takes time. And it may be that. It may be that it just takes time because one of the concerns we had coming in, and this is our first Teodal football reference, we're going to go ahead and make it now. Teodal football was talking about how these Velas teams and other teams he'd been at had progressed slowly, right? They
Mm,
progressed really, really slowly. And I'm not sure if that was because of personnel or because of tactics. And so it may just be a second. I don't know. But
yeah,
right now it's frustrating.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
I'm interested into how well the Bielsa style of soccer is going to translate into this modern era. Because when you look at tactics, it's always something comes into vogue, something, and then it's cyclical and it goes throughout these different formations and shapes and philosophies and
Mm-hmm.
all that. And I just am curious as to how well it's going to translate because Tata Martino didn't go to Mexico and like revert back to what he was doing when he first came to Atlanta United. In fact, if anything, he's kind of continued to adapt the approach that he had in 2018, playing with three center backs, and just being a little bit more, I guess, modern, I guess, in his
Mm-hmm.
approach, away from the true, pure crystal blue BLCista football.
That's a great pull there because this next question lines up really nicely with that. It's from Jacob. He asked, as part of Heinz's growth as a manager, do you think he needs to learn to be a bit more flexible and potentially move away from his man marking system? And the answer is probably yes. Right? I think everyone needs to learn to be a little bit more flexible, right? Maybe in our daily lives and in our potential coaching lives. If you're out there listening, Gabby, um,
I mean,
and that's probably a part of it, right?
I would
Tasa had to learn to do it, you know?
I would say yes, he should be more flexible, but I don't expect that. And the players that we've talked to said, it's like they don't expect him to all of a sudden go away from this. So I think the question is, if you don't go away from the man marking, how do you actually make it effective for you? And it's something we were just talking about earlier.
Hmm.
Is I think that you can actually be more effective in that system if you are doing it more aggressive. Like you got to go kind of all in or change your approach. And again, I understand why it's difficult. I understand why it's
Hmm.
difficult to kind of put yourself in that position because it is, you definitely are playing on the knife's edge. But that's how this team's always played. But then again, I just go back to like the roster is not as good as it was back in
Exactly.
2017, 2018. So maybe they wouldn't be capable of playing that way. I don't know.
I was kind of processing a take as you were talking about how it's good to have your principles, right? Like there can always
Sure.
be core tenets of what you're doing, and it's good to have that philosophy in place so you can build on it, but you also have to adjust it to your personnel, right? Like if you are a team in college football that runs, we're playing the hits today. If you're a team in college football that runs like a spread offense, right, and your quarterback can't throw the ball, but he's really fast, right, you're going to run a lot of read options. But maybe if you have a quarterback who can throw the ball but isn't fast, you're going to, I don't know, throw a lot more like four verts and seam routes and then stuff like that, right? Like you have to tailor it to what the personnel is. And as I was thinking about that really clever and insightful take, I went, wait, what if everyone on the team is bad? What kind of
Yeah.
system do you run then?
Yeah. Like, what if you had the quarterback difference and your offensive line? You had five graduating seniors the year before.
Right, exactly. So then you're just Florida State.
Yeah.
So the I
And it's like it doesn't matter what you're working on in practice because you're just getting blown
mhm.
up off the line of scrimmage. Yeah.
And I just genuinely don't think the God. We're in our analytical purgatory again. I just generally don't think the team is good enough. There we go. That's the whole
Yeah, I
bit.
know. Exactly.
That's the whole bit. I will say
It kind of goes back
that
to something I was saying earlier in the show, where it's like you can try to rationalize the stuff as much as you can. We can try to go into the tactics and everything, but like
uh-huh.
at the end of the day, if your team, if the quality of the players aren't as good, we wrote it last year. Teodal Football and I wrote a piece about Carlos Bocanegra that published last year, and like one of the sections was like, it's not the coach, and at that time we were talking about Stephen Glass. And like the struggles that the team was having under his interim leadership, but at the end of the day, it's like when you look at the numbers, typically that's not a huge driver in moving a team from near the bottom of the table to near the top of the table. The coach can make a difference on the margins, and so you need that help on the margins if you want to win titles. So a good coach is very, very important. But on the whole, you need a quality roster to be able to make yourself competitive.
Move on to this next part from Kojo. It says, kind of And part of Jacob's question, but Joe has said, oh, he calls you out. Joe has said, he probably didn't say it like that. Joe has said he sees Heinz A's hire an approach is like a 2-year plan. At this point, I'm not sure what the first year has been able to do for foundation purposes. But do you see this year so far as a successful foundation builder for the next coming season for year 2? Or is this year a bust? I think I know the answer, but I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this as well. Yeah, I know this question is also related to the most important transfer window of the team's history. Good take, Kojo. Good take. Man, how much can you build when we have another question here?
Okay.
Let's add this in.
Yeah.
Let's add this in. Kurt says top to bottom, there's a lot of subpar to bad in the Atlanta United organization and roster. Who do we feel confident that we could build around? Sosa, Joseph, if he gets back to 100%, Miles until he gets sold, Darren because he's British, Arthur Blank because he's rich. I say definitely yes to the last two.
Yep,
for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
But there are pieces, right, that are good. Sosa is
Mhm.
one of them. Miles is one of them. George is one of them. It's all in the back line right
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
And the only concern with that is that a lot of those guys are probably leaving in the next 2 years, you know? So what do you build around?
Right.
I guess Joseph is part of that. Joseph is still in the plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else do you do?
That's kind of it. I mean, like
Yep.
honestly, but I think part of this is the nature of soccer, where like in soccer, you just generally see a lot more turnover for a couple reasons. One is because unlike a lot of American sports, you have all these competing leagues, which creates like opportunities for different players, both financially and just sporting wise. So you have like you have a lot more turnover in soccer. So it's not typically like the same kind of structure on the roster where you kind of like build around this core. Like, the Braves might build around Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies and Freddie Freeman for 5, 6, 7, 8, however long. It's not really like that in soccer so much, but I understand that the central thesis of the point is like, what do you kind of establish this club around on the field? And so, yeah, Joseph's clearly is going to be that guy who's going to be here, I think, for a while. And like where it always gets dark for me is when I start thinking about Miles Robinson and George Bello, and it's like, if you want to revitalize the team and like bring in new players and give yourself room in the salary budget, you have to get rid of some players. And I think back to John Gallagher last year, where it's like, a lot of us were like irritated that the team was willing to offload him. But I think the reasoning that the club would say is because that you can only get rid of the players that other teams want, and other teams want players who produce or have the potential to produce. And so you have to give a little to be able to give yourself an opportunity. And so I fear that that's going to be the case with Miles Robinson and George Bello. And clearly those guys are kind of on track for, to play at a higher level in Europe. So I want that for them individually as well. But it doesn't give me a lot of hope for this team. Just like when I think about what could possibly happen down the line.
Well, Kurt mentioned building around Arthur Blank because he's rich, and that may have to come into play here. Where
that may be the biggest one. Yeah.
The guys who teams don't want, right? Like you may have to eat some money on that. And we keep saying that, and it's just becoming more and more apparent that that's probably going to have to be the case if they want to get this team back to where it was.
And I would say one other thing that you can build around is the twos in the academy, which I think is very good, and not like that's going to it could potentially make a big difference for you on the first team roster. But what it really can do is provide you with essentially a large crop of reserve players that you have to spend minimal amounts of salary budget on. So that sets you up in good stead. And potentially for profit.
Right. And the goal there is to be Philadelphia, but with money.
Yes.
It's like
exactly.
It's like when in baseball, like Oakland started doing Moneyball, and then like the Red Sox came in and were like, well, we actually have $5 billion in Boston money, right? And we can also do this, but we can do it better because we have more money, right? Like that would be the goal for Atlanta United is to establish that and bring in like 15 different 17-year-old midfielders to do bicycle kicks every game, because that's apparently Philadelphia's MO right now, but also have the expensive DBs and everything like that Philadelphia is lacking. So there's a future, right? Like, and it seems like the academy setup is good. It seems like the 2 setup is good. So maybe y'all just hold out for like 6 more years and we got this.
yeah.
Crap. Kurt, let's go back to Kurt here. This is a
We can
dark
look forward to
question.
the Michael Parker's Jeff Lorenowitz testimonial match.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Kurt asked this, and this kind of sets the tone. We have one more tone setting question, I think, too, for the transfer window questions coming up. But Kurt asked this, and it's dark, but it's classic Kurt. What decisions made in the last 3 years have made this team and organization better? Joe, go.
Oh shoot, because I was reading the question initially, like, what can they do in the next 3 years to make this better? Do you have any ideas? Well, I think.
They Gabby's here. That's good.
Yeah, that is good. I mean, I wanted Gabriel Heinze. I was very vocal about that.
Mhm.
So that was good. Hold on. I want to keep this because I'm just really thinking.
Santiago Sosa is good, I think. Franco Barra is good,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. I mean, I think you can point out some signings. I'm trying to think if there's anything like bigger, more on like the foundational level.
This is bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is just some of those signings, some of those kind of decent players that you've signed.
All right. I think we've
Gosh.
established that we need better players and better other things. So let's go to this question from Mark, who asked with the
I like
transfer.
the kit.
Okay,
I know,
but Joe's wrong about that, so that's cool. Mark asked, with the transfer window opening in roughly 24 hours, there's been very little flying around the rumor mill. There must be some rumors as to who is on Atlanta United's radar. Any thoughts on why things are so quiet? And this is good questioning, especially for two quotation marks journalists, right? Like we should understand this on some level. And my thought right now is simply that one, people are distracted who may be interested in dealing with like rumors in South America, right? Because Copa America is going on, everything like that. There are other things to report on than rumors to MLS clubs. That may be part of it, very small part of it. The other part is that the team is just tighter than it used to be, honestly, and keeping these leaks in.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, the club has always been very good about not letting anything leak. I think American clubs are just generally, both in soccer and just kind of oftentimes, is harder in America. But I will say that I wonder if maybe COVID has an impact in terms of like journalists not being at training grounds, able to have little conversations about things. I do wonder if that has any impact on like what kind of information is able to leak. That's all just kind of theoretical. So perhaps, but I mean, I think clearly we're going to see a pretty busy month for this team. It has to be. They have to be busy this month trying to improve this roster.
Let me build on that. Let's go to this quote from Gabriel Heinze and kind of translated by Felipe here, who was at the media availability of the day. Said Heinze says that Atlanta United is working hard to strengthen the team during the upcoming window. There have been differing opinions, naturally, but Heinze added that the front office collaboration has been very good. So that's encouraging that they at least know they need to do it. Now, whether that's a statement of fact, right? Like that they're actually working on it and like they are moving towards these things is yet to be seen. But I think they understand the stakes here. I think everyone involved understands what's going on, and there will at least be a push, right? Whether or not it's successful or not, who knows? But there will at least be a push.
Definitely, and I would, I would take it back to a question that I never really answered, considering it was kind of I was name checked in it about the whole 2 year plan. I think that it is important for Gabriel Heinze. If he's got 2 years here, this has to be a big moment for the club to improve the opportunity that he'll have to achieve what he wants to achieve here in these next couple of years. So I can imagine that he would be quite urgent in this situation.
Obviously, we've talked a lot about Zeke moving out. We had two questions about that as well from Tony and the hidden jewel. We'll go to this one from Tony to kind of sum it all up. He says, odds that this was Barco's last game. Again, now he's off to the Olympics with Argentina. He'll be in Tokyo for a second. And my thought is yes. I think that was probably it, which is crazy to think about. And it dies with all the lack of ceremony it probably deserved, quite frankly.
Yeah, I would probably put a percent. If I was to put a percentage on it, I would probably say 85%.
80 something, right?
Yeah, that was the last game he's played. Just to kind of run it down, if Argentina is knocked out before the group stage, which is unlikely because they're like clearly one of the two dominant teams in there, then he would be back in early August, probably before the August 4th match against Montreal, and the transfer window closes August 5th. So that would be, I think, the only chance we do see him again. Because I'm just kind of assuming that he is going to go in this window.
There we go. There we go. We also had a question from Dr. Vote MD. Thank you, Doctor, for your question. What MLS veteran should we go after to fill the Parky Leary role? I know we have Goosby's all the way in the goal. We need an outfield player on the show in the field. That seems to be the key. Look at what Dax McCarty is doing in Nashville. I wanted to address this one simply because I just wanted to say that those guys are total outliers, right? Like those are really, really hard to find guys that are still effective that late in their career, like Larry, like Parky, and like Dax as well. And frankly, I don't think that's the profile of player that Lady United are going to be looking at or need to be looking at right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to acquire one of those kinds of players at this point. Maybe before next season, maybe in the off season, you could acquire somebody like that, but it's going to be difficult. I will say though that it is something that I was thinking, watching this game, this most recent game, and just like hearing some of the voices afterwards, some of the interviews. I just really do feel like this team probably is missing a lot of that kind of the clubhouse leadership, quote unquote. And I know that sometimes a lot of that stuff gets overplayed at times, but I really do think that Parkhurst and Lorenowitz, I mean, you call them outliers, but like, yeah, there's just like nothing. It's really, really hard to find anybody like that that can kind of bring all that veteran experience and know-how and help unite a dressing room. So I do think that it is sorely missed what those guys brought to this team.
Joe, I know you've sorely missed as well. You've sorely missed Rapid Fire, which is happening right now. Pitsy asks, have you been to Disney and what is your favorite ride currently on a family vacation there? I hate that we're starting with this one because my answer is a bummer. You go first.
Well, I can tell you my worst. I've been to both Disneyland and Disney World, and on Disneyland on Space Mountain, I hyperventilated. So that's probably my least favorite.
I also got very, very frightened on Space Mountain. I got claustrophobic. I was not a fan. I did not know what was about to happen to me. Did not have a great time. My family went to Disney World after my mom died and after my dad got remarried. So I apologize to you, Pity, on whatever parent either died or got remarried. I'm sure your life sucks right now. So
I will say,
welcome to Disney.
I did start to enjoy roller coasters. It just took me several years to get over the hyperventilating experience.
I passed out on my first roller coaster ever. It was the one where you stand up at Six Flags. I went over the first turn and don't remember the rest of it. I'm not a big fan of roller coasters. Nick asked, how many goals do we have in our last 3 games if Joseph is on the field? And I generally don't think it's too many more, maybe 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Pitsy asked, can we take up a collection to get a dude? Yeah, like, I don't know, like get some Dave and Buster's tokens together or something like that. And maybe we can afford another Kubo. I don't know. Smurfy asked, who do I need to bribe to get one of those XG all the other teams have? Atlanta's XG is very bad. I don't know if y'all have checked that out. Non-penalty XG, I think, is still second worst in the entire league. Only Columbus is worse.
It's like the same as what the team was doing under Stephen Glass last year. It's like a pretty consistent half a goal to a goal a game. Maybe a little bit better, but not much. I mean, it's pretty rough.
Pretty awful. Pretty awful. Philip asked, are there any options you see on this team better than running Mo Adams out on the pitch? And the answer is no.
No. And that's what's sad.
Yeah. Scott asked, more of a MLS as a whole question, but at what point does keeping Bello and Robinson seem plausible and outweigh the benefits of selling? That's a really bad rapid fire question. I shouldn't have put in rapid fire. Bello and Robinson seems plausible and outweigh the benefits of selling. Yeah. Yes. Carlos asked,
we talked about that earlier. So
yeah. Carlos asked, is it time to trade everyone for draft picks? Trust the process. This should be the team that gets you the draft picks, right? Like we shouldn't be going lower than this.
Right. Yeah.
Is my take. Pity asked, Disney. Sorry, man. I know it's a bummer for you. Palm Tree asked, how can we make these games fun to watch until we get better? The answer is Joe Patrick.
Well, I've been thinking about doing something for our patrons where we just I'll start a stream or something and we can somehow watch the game together. I haven't fully figured it out. It's still a half-baked idea, but I thought that might be something a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Or even in person sometime. I mean, that would be the most ideal thing, would be to do a in-person get together somewhere. We had plans once long ago that have been put in the dustbin of history about doing something like that. Maybe we'll do it at some point, but
for money.
but
for charity.
we'll get in the Discord and figure out how we can watch a game together. Unfortunately, with my schedule, it's kind of been weird where haven't been able to do it so far this season, but before
And
long,
that
we will do that.
was rapid fire. Joe, you have a whiteboard. You have some things written on that whiteboard.
Oh
I think
my
this is a
gosh.
good way to close the show.
Totally forgot to talk about this. Okay, so I posted on Twitter, so that's good enough. And I did have a mistake on there. I want to correct that for the record on here. I said there was 2 penalties. One of the penalties should have been erased. It was the Joseph goal from near the penalty spot, to be fair, against Miami. One thing I did note, though, when I started this audit, I went back to the first game or the early games to find, to just start recording the goals. Kevin Egan, he was so much more excited in those first couple games, especially that first home game, man. I was like, yeah, so excited. And now it's like not the same, unfortunately. I hate to see someone as
beautiful as Kevin.
Exactly. Just like that. Yeah, you can just.
I got to see Kevin at the kit launch the other day. I don't know if I told you this, but we got to talk about WWE for a second. It was phenomenal. I'll tell you off air.
Nice. Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait to hear that.
All right, y'all. Check out the Patreon again. Felipe going to be on with us later in the week. Thanks for staying with us through a long and rambling show that is getting more and more depressing as time goes on.
And thanks to Felipe for going to the press conference for us today, where we just got to recycle his information.
Thank you for the content, as always. All right, let's get out of here. We love y'all. Bye.